Hi all, it's Vanessa Love. This is my channel about the mental health field and related topics. In case you're new here, I have my master's in art therapy, an additional degree in mental health counseling. I am licensed in Connecticut and New York. All right. So I have been in private practice for 10 years. Basically, since I graduated college, I went right into private practice. There's a lot of reasons for that. I can go into detail, I think, eventually about I know I have gone into detail about why I left to work at a facility. I know that I kind of went through a moment in, I think, March and just put a bunch of things on private or link only. So that's also a possibility of why I left. So in the last 10 years, there are lots of things that have changed and lots of things. Oh my gosh, I just really appreciate that things have changed. So insurances. Insurances have become so easy. You go onto a website or you can get something, one of those, what do they call them? EHRs, electronic health record apps, and use those. I don't use the EHRs. I use the websites that are available, and you can check benefits. Oh my gosh, so much easier. Check benefits and then submit claims. And this is whether or not you're like paneled with those insurances or not, except for like a couple. Like I don't know if you can really sign on to the Connecticut Medicaid. Sorry, I get those two confused. So Medicaid website, unless you actually accept Medicaid, because why would you need that information if you weren't accepting Medicaid anyway? And also the way Medicaid is currently, you have to be paneled with them in order to accept the insurance. There's no out of network, to my knowledge, with that. So insurances became so much easier. I used to have to print out basically a super bill or a bill and put in all the information, and then inevitably the computer process, the scanning process for those things, they would end up not working very well. So I would get these very weird pieces of mail from insurances that would say things like, "We don't have your office address. How did you send this to me? We don't have your client's address." What? Okay. There were even times where it would say, "We are sending you this mail regarding this client, full name and everything," and then they would be like, "Yeah, so we don't have their name." What? How do you know that it's this particular client? One of them was like it wasn't the main person on the insurance, like it wasn't the main person on the insurance. So like, how do you know that I'm talking specifically about this person that's on this other person's insurance, unless you would have known that in some regard that it was about this person? So I don't get those anymore, which is very nice. So insurance is very easy. I do have to tell you that one time Anthem changed, they started the Blue Card phone number. Blue Card Services is basically, you call them and you tell them the first 3 digits of your client's member ID, and they're supposed to tell you which number to call to get information about that client. So usually Connecticut has a number for providers. You can call them, or I could call them, and it would be like, it was suddenly like giving a runaround. I think for the first 2 days gave a runaround, and I was so tired of the runaround. It was like, okay, so call Blue Card Services, transfer to Blue Card Services. Yeah, so it's this number that I've already had and called. Or it would be like, oh, actually, it's this other number. Actually, we didn't get this, the first 3 letters. So did you say zebra instead of? It was like, oh my God, that was like the worst. Trying to find out someone's information is the worst. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. So yeah, it's very, again, very easy now, and I appreciate it so much. And what I really appreciate is that if you are a person who is working on getting your hours for like your full licensure, that you can go and have your supervisors like information, or you can put your supervisor's information in. So like, here's your information, and then it'll be like supervising clinician or something like that on these websites, so that it's much less confusion. It is, again, so easy. So marketing. When I first got into private practice, marketing was not something that was on my mind. I was just like, hey, I have my shingle, let's go. And that's just not how it's done. Like, you have to do marketing, people have to know who you are. So there were a bunch of things. I made a list of 40 things that I did. And this was, I made this list about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. And it's all of these things. And I wrote down, like, if I had any clients from those things, if they worked, here's some things that I did try. And there are a lot of these things that didn't work out for me. These things could very possibly work out for you. It depends on the area, who you are as a person, how you conduct yourself, how receptive people are, how popular things are. So just keep that in mind. This is just stuff that I tried. So talk at the library, I did that once, and I had to pay for it. So there was another library that was closer to my practice, and on their website it said, well, you have to like contact us in order for us to approve whether or not you okay. So this library said you have to contact us in order for us to give you a quote and to make a reservation. So I contact them, and they're like, okay, so it's like this amount that I wouldn't be able to afford at the time. And they're like, well, this is what we do for the for-profits. And so I was like, I mean, I guess, okay, that's like strange. And so they were like, but that's like the rate that we just give. Like that's all the time. I'm like, well, why don't you just list it? The other library listed their stuff, and they were very nice. They were like, when I went to go pay, and it was very affordable, they were just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Oh, this is so great. Oh, like they were very appreciative. But this other place was like, yeah, we don't care about your financial situation, whatever. Like, whatever you want, just no. If you want to join us as a nonprofit, that's fine. But when you're for profit, this is the cost. It was just such a weird experience. Like, okay, all right, sure. So let's see. I did an open house. I did that 2 times. I did one that was just focusing on the actual like group practice, and we had plenty of people. We reached out basically to other clinicians to just kind of show them like who we were and what was going on. The second one was an art open house, so there were artworks on the wall and everything, and that it was it like there were no new clients that way. I do think that there were people who appreciated having the artwork up, who one of the other clinicians said she really liked it. The supervisor or the group practice owner at that time was like, he said that you would take this down, just take them down. And there was like a whole other thing with that as well that was like, okay, so now there's more cost to this than ever. I did a journal class at a gallery. It was by donation. My friend basically took me aside and said, hey, if you're doing this by donation, it's not like you're really not getting paid what you should be paid for this. So I don't know, like I can't support you doing this, which I appreciate because that was like a business mentor. And I agreed after a while. It wasn't going where I wanted it to go. And honestly, one of the gallery owners was a little bit off. And so once that person got into a relationship, it was very spotty to actually get them to show up to unlock the doors. So there was that issue. let's see, introduction letters. Not like those. There were a couple of people who did reach out to me maybe a year or two later that were like, hey, could you send us more cards? And, so it was kind of like one of those, like, that kind of worked in a way. I joined Rotary. I joined two different Rotaries, and I'm like, I get different things out of Rotary than just clients. So that's one of those, like, well, that's more like nurturing me and like my overall goals for my life rather than something that would be just business related. Networking, it just really, you end up networking with a bunch of people who like don't really need your services, but it's, good to get your name out. And then sometimes these networking things aren't even in your town. So I know that I did a couple of networking things, especially I was really into, I'm a business owner, and INC would have a couple, and there were other things. So I would go way out of town, meet plenty of wonderful people who would be like, oh my gosh, you would be great for our program. And then nothing would ever come of it. I get the sense that with some networking, it's a lot of talk and then a little follow through, unfortunately. Connecting to other therapists, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. I did poetry nights and workshops. There were like people who I kind of knew, who like, there would be like these big parties where it'd be like, yeah, like maybe if you get to know someone in a comfortable place, maybe they would be like, oh yes, well, I know this therapist. It sometimes worked for me. Volunteering, my YouTube channel, my blog, my webpage, Psychology Today, which actually is the majority of people find me that way. And I will do other videos about issues that are coming up with them. I know for some of the therapists who might be watching, that might be a trigger. I apologize. Facebook networking, meetups, Instagram. I did have a Twitter for a while. I don't have a Twitter anymore. LinkedIn, internships, which were supposed to also be like, oh yeah, well, we'll always keep you in mind. Again, the words with sometimes a little follow through. Cub Scouts, that's again one of those that's more personal than it is like a professional thing. It's like a life goal thing and not just professional. Giveaways, doing artwork. Let's see, the actual practice owner, he referred a lot of people to me, actually. Word of mouth, that does work occasionally. I feel like that like works just remarkably, actually. Talking to people about what I do, just starting conversations like that. Hey, did you know that I'm an art therapist? And some people, they couldn't run out of that situation fast enough. After a while, it just became too awkward. Trainings that I've done in my area, in the state, sometimes that just, no. I did give a talk at Connecticut College. It was helpful a little bit, but I think upon reflection, I probably wouldn't have like continued with that, I think. Or like, if it came up again, I'd probably be like, nah, that's okay. Let's not. Giving out business cards, going to it. Like I went into a couple of art schools to kind of put my business card on a bulletin board. That didn't always work. People found me on the internet. There's like a couple of other places other than Psychology Today that have therapy listings. I don't actually, I know I have a couple of listings out there, and it just doesn't, it's not. Schools, the connections to schools actually have worked out for me and have given me, gotten me like around a lot more people and given me that what is that called? Like the experience, like continued the experience with dealing with kids who have been adopted, eventually with adults who have been adopted. My work in, let's see, what is that called? The group home. That got me, like, it's kind of like on-site training. That was a job, but like still on-site training. Let's see, groups that I've done, like that I've offered through private practice, ads. And then there was the very expensive ad that I did in the golfing magazine that was submitted to, I guess, golf courses around here. And I had to actually argue with that person that I did not get as many referrals as I was expecting from that. And they were like, well, you don't know where your referrals came from. And I was like, Psychology Today is pretty good about telling you where your referrals are coming from. They have a specific number. They have a way that they're emailing you, that it is very clear it's coming from them. And also, I think at that point, I had a lot of Medicaid, low-income adult clients. So it was like, please stop telling me who my clients are. Like, you don't know. So the other thing is keeping a reputation. Now, I really do care about what, it's like almost any influencer, like you do have to care about what you're putting out there. There are times, even today, I was like, is it really okay for me to maybe do a video about my experiences with the not roommates, but the landlords that I've had? And, I'm still debating about that. I do want to share these stories, but maybe just sharing what I learned from those stories is better. However, I like listening to people talk about okay, so there was this thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, how did you even? And there's just a lot with that I sometimes just the takeaway is important, but also sometimes it's just nice to listen to a story occasionally. So I do care about my reputation. Especially when I was working in New London, you do have to care about what your reputation is and how you interact with clients. Now, when I was in school, they did talk about being in a small town and practicing in a small town, and the considerations can you go to the bank and put in checks? Because if you go to a teller and they start seeing, names show up, people who they know, who, are paying you obviously by check, is that how do you in a small town, do you accept checks? And how do you put them in your bank account without a HIPAA violation? And what do you do? Now, my ethics professors were very much avoid eye contact at all times, don't engage, don't do that. It was almost very scary. And I have seen some of these professors in public. Now, any other professor who I've had, they don't mind having conversations. We are colleagues at this point. But these ethics professors are still one time, I was looking at one of them and I was like, oh, that looks like my professor, but just, I don't think that is. And she looked at me, it was my professor. And I was like, oh, and you know what? You want to play this game? Fine. I'm going to play it too. You don't want to talk? Fine. I don't want to talk either. But it does hurt people's feelings. And I was in a small town. It would be too obvious for me to ignore clients, ex-clients, all of that, because it was you would know. I'm at a group, I'm at a table with a group of people, everyone's talking, especially if I was doing the poetry workshops, and we're all sitting there, and you have this person come in and oh, hi, how's it going? Oh, and maybe they know a couple of people in that group. Wouldn't it look bad for me to be especially if they said, hi, Vanessa, and I have to be so no, that obviously would look so bad and obvious that, just saying hi to someone in public, I understand what the situation is. They understand what the situation is. Not everyone has to be basically told, oh, this is my client. They don't have to know that I'm this person's therapist. Now, unfortunately, people do when they love you. They will be like, oh my God, this is my therapist. She's so great. She's so wonderful. Look at this. And okay, that's embarrassing. It's almost you have to in a small town be please don't embarrass me in front of my friends, because as soon as you walk away, I'm guaranteeing that they will ask me what your diagnosis is, or I will have to be like, so, yes, so what we were talking about this poem, oh my God, I can't. So like you do end up having to talk to people and be nice to them and all of that, because again, it would be obvious if you were ignoring someone purposefully, and in the way that my professors were, and it was so interesting because in that class people said these professors are very strict. In other classes, they were very relaxed. So I just, kind of one of those like weird things that happened in grad school that I just assume, which I shouldn't, but I just assumed that maybe they were nervous about what they were saying in that class, or maybe they were told like you have to be very, very specific, and you can't, there's no leeway here. When in a lot of these ethics, it's up to interpretation. It's, what would be okay in a situation where a client comes up to you while you're doing a poetry workshop, or while you're doing an art journal workshop, or while you're doing something, and says, "Hi, how's it going? You are my therapist." That actually was not discussed, which I'm like, that seems like that would be more important to discuss, to, actually have a dialogue about. Because you're not obviously breaking their HIPAA. They are choosing to share that information. So what do you do? And like my clients, again, like I respect my clients, and I love my work. So like by osmosis, I love my clients. So like, I just think they're amazing people. So of course, if they stop me in the grocery store, especially in a small town, "Hi, how's it going? Oh my gosh, look at your daughter. She's so cute." And like, just have that little bit of moment. It doesn't have to be a therapy session. You don't have to do that. It can be just this like really cool thing. So like, it does matter. It does matter how personable you are. Like, can you imagine like seeing your therapist in public and having them just be so cold to you, and then you have a session the next day and it's like, what do you do? And honestly, Stanford sometimes is a small town because there's one Target, there's one Burlington, there's one Marshalls. So the likelihood of you running into your clients when you are just, running out and getting some things, especially like downtown area, there's a lot of apartments, there's a lot of people. I know some of my clients walk there, drive there, like they will definitely be all around. Like, they talk about the same places that I go to. And so it's kind of like, well, sometimes I'm going to run into them. I understand this. Luckily, I don't do that very often in Stanford, but New London, it was like, there was one poetry open mic. How many people are going to that? There was one poetry open mic when I first moved there. Then there were like 3. So it's not like it didn't like spread, but there was kind of this, well, there's only one place, where are we really going to go? And there is this like weird situation that I was in that I did have to get what they call supervision about, because I didn't know honestly how to react. So I had like an interaction with someone, and I thought everything was fine. Everything's good. We're all good. We're good. The person later developed negative feelings towards me. All right, cool. Sure. Probably would have been better to have those aired out on some level in some way, but they weren't expressed. So I go to pick up my now husband at a store, and this person is working there, and she has now said things that are obviously just discouraging. Like, that she's just like, I don't like this person. So kind of outing herself as like this ex-client, and it was very uncomfortable. So I had to kind of sit there and just be like, I'm now uncomfortable with this. What do I do? And like my supervisor gave me advice. It's great. Later on, that person was connected to a business that I really liked, and I really liked this person, like the business owner. Like, this business owner is so cool. Oh my god! Like, I you ever have those best friend crushes? Like, you want to best friend crush that person so hard, you're like, I want to hang out with you all the time. So I really just respected this business owner. Now, this person would take pictures of like people who had bought like really cool stuff from her and like, share it on her Instagram. And I fully expected that this would be the same treatment that I had. She had said, I'm going to do this for you. Now, it didn't end that way. There was no picture of me on Instagram from this business owner who, again, I respected. I really just enjoy her as a person. Now, when I looked back, I realized that this person was close to this person who didn't like me. And, again, she doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. There's no, like, she doesn't want to have a conversation. Fine, whatever. But like, to have that experience was so painful as a business owner to business owner. Like, this is business. Like, even if we weren't going to be friends, like, why did it have to come to this? And, so eventually I had to be like, well, I got to cut my losses on this, because this wasn't really a person who had, like, who this really isn't a person to connect with, like, and that's unfortunate. And luckily that happened before I moved away, because then I could be like, well, like, it doesn't matter. However, had I stayed in that area, I would feel raw about that. I probably would eventually have a conversation with that person and be like, listen, you make your choices. That's great. Can we talk about this? Because this isn't okay for me. And I don't know how that conversation would go. I would hope that it would go well. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is actually what happened. This is a problem, obviously, as someone in a small town, because this person can continue to make these comments to people. And hey, they have the right to have an opinion. Like, that's fine. But also, like, this was a business connection that was kind of like severed, unfortunately. Anyway, I have to go, so I will talk with you guys soon. My business phone, man, it keeps going off. All right, I will talk with you guys soon. Have a great one.